Alright, so I have not felt so inspired to make any videos the past few days, but I came across this video and it's from May 2017, so I'm a little late for the response, but it's called Nihilism in Popular Culture by someone known as Blonde in the Belly of the Beast.
Hey guys! Popular culture used to be centered around the arts and was a way for communities to experience a sort of shared transcendence. Works of art and music, theater, and literature used to manifest the human struggle and the human experience. They would captivate the viewer and make them feel whole, feel understood, feel like they were part of the larger tapestry of humanity, or in the most successful cases, feel like they're part of the divine. The horrors of humanity and the potential evil of man are threads seen in some of the most influential and beautiful pieces of art, music, literature, and theater throughout history. The bleakness of existence used to motivate people to strive to connect to something better, something eternal. This was a tremendous impetus for so much of the world's art, as was religion, particularly Christianity, which uniquely endows man with divinity. The world is safer and freer now than it ever has been. War deaths have drastically decreased since the end of World War II. The share of the world's population living in poverty has plummeted since 1820. Infectious diseases are killing just a fraction of those that they used to. And the world has never been more democratic than it is.
So, just starting here, if we're going to kind of be sloppy with correlation and causation, or maybe even not even sloppy at all necessarily, we could start questioning, wait a second. Look at all the progress that has been made. And you're about to claim that a lot of bad things are happening in pop culture and art and just the ethics of society as a whole. That's going to be the point you're making, but yet you just ran off all these statistics of the way things are improving. So the question is, maybe people becoming more scientific and sort of moving away from religion, at least more so than ever before, maybe that could be argued to be contributing to some of these great statistics, right? I'm not saying that's necessarily the case, but there's no point in making all these claims and just kind of loosely associating it with Christianity when if your argument is that things are on the decline as far as our sort of culture, like our culture's on the decline, when all these things are getting better, you kind of wonder what's the evidence for the culture being on the decline other than some sort of subjective thing that you're feeling that you don't like the fact that people are basically having different perspectives than you and people are becoming less religious.
Today, we have never had such a high quality of life or the ability to exercise so many freedoms. So why, with all of these comforts and opportunities, have we witnessed an unparalleled era of popular culture in terms of cynicism and nihilism? In art, literature, and music, there was a profound shift in tone in the mid-20th century. Although some of the cultural cynicism can be attributed to the extraordinarily bloody century, the real culprit is postmodernism and its wide-scale, subconscious push towards the adoption of nihilism as a permanent worldview. Postmodernism is mostly a reaction to the assumed certainty of objective or scientific methods of explaining reality, which is why they reject universal standards of beauty and of technique, and why they are highly skeptical of explanations which claim to be valid for all groups or all cultures, traditions, races, etc. They only believe in the relative truths of each individual person. You can create your own standards for morality, for beauty, for a sense of self, and that interpretation is all that matters. I encourage you to try this exercise.
It's funny how she's into such a strict objective interpretation of reality when it comes to certain things, but then when it comes to her religion, reason and logic and evidence and science just goes out the window. So things are objective. Where is the objectivity? Is it in Christianity? All these other things? Where is it? She's picking and choosing when rationality or reason matters.
guys, because I found it very funny. I was reading about postmodernism and critical theory for this presentation, and I wanted to find a concise but clear and direct definition, just one. And nearly every definition that I read was pointlessly verbose. No one seemed to be able to put forth anything meaningful in fewer than 3 or so paragraphs. This, in and of itself, is a reflection of postmodernism. Nothing is certain, nothing is clear, there are no absolute truths, and things can...
So you hate postmodernism, but you couldn't really figure out what it even means. That seems a little strange.
Mean whatever you want them to, because you can create your own standards for truth and reality. Think for a moment that you reject the concept of absolute truth.
Which is exactly what you're doing. You are creating your own reality. You are pushing your own subjective worldview. The only thing you're going to do in this video is say, my views are objective. My views are the true ones. Even though we can find all these people across this political spectrum, across religion or atheism, who would have all kinds of different ideas about morality and politics and any topic under the sun, there'd be all these different views. Where is the objectivity? It must be with you. Isn't it surprising that any people who believe in an objective reality or objective morality always seem to have, they're the ones that have the objective truth, right? It's always them. Isn't that ironic?
You would have to entertain that no single act, including murder, rape, or pedophilia, is inherently immoral, because the legal and social standards for punishment and shame are social constructs implemented by man. You would also have to concede...
Yes, you're right. It is implemented by man. It doesn't... So what? Just because God is not the one who decided that certain things are bad, just because I don't need God to whisper in my ear and tell me not to rape, that's not how we need to determine whether or not rape is bad, right? We can see that people don't like being raped. It causes all these sort of problems within people if they're raped. And therefore we realize, oh, this is not a nice thing to do. I have empathy. Or even for people who don't have empathy, we structure society because, most of us agree rape isn't going to be a good thing going around, so we do punish people. And that's why you have people that are all sorts of different religions or atheists that think rape is wrong. Now, of course, you will find people that maybe don't think rape is wrong or have a different, looser definition of it, but that also goes through all sorts of religions or atheism. That's why you'll find, you want to do some stereotype of some frat boy rapist or whatever, he might have a big cross on his neck, right? And what would you say? You would just say he's not a real Christian or something, right? Easy way to do that, right? So I would just say, anyone who is an atheist who rapes someone, I could just say, well, they're not a real atheist. A real atheist would understand that it would run by logic and rationality, and they would realize that rape is a bad idea for so many reasons, so they must actually not be an atheist. It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, this has nothing to do with it, right? When you actually look at, even if you look at the sort of moral tenets of any religion, it's not even guaranteed that the religious are going to be following that any more than someone that's not religious, except for maybe the more absurd aspects of religion that you ignore anyway, most likely in your day-to-day life.
There is no universal concept of beauty, which would lead you to reject established standards for artistry. What a dangerous worldview. To think that
Isn't that dangerous? Isn't that dangerous that taste in art is subjective? Isn't that dangerous that we might have different tastes in art and music? That's scary.
No true beauty to create or to marvel at, no true evil to thwart or to punish, and no true good to defend or to praise.
All you're doing is you're putting the word true in front of all these words, and true defined as your subjective preferences, right? Whatever art that you find nice is the true beautiful art. Whatever your principles are is the true principle. So you're not really saying anything here other than I'm going to espouse my subjective opinions, my subjective worldview as being the best one, which we all think that our subjective views are the best ones.
This line of thinking lends directly to a hedonistic, self-serving life where you are the ultimate king and nothing, God, man, or nature outranks you. Because of postmodern influence, art has gone from this to this. Music has gone...
So she's showing the God touchy painting, which I find, I'm sure it's technically a interesting piece of art, but I don't find it that interesting. I wouldn't want it hanging in my house. And then the other thing she shows is a sort of modern art. I don't know if it's Pollock or who it is, but it's just splattered paint everywhere, which sometimes I like that stuff, but I find that I don't necessarily find that to be the most interesting all the time either. There's plenty of people who both the examples of art that she gave would say, I don't really like either one that much, or that they like both.
On from this to this. And movies and TV have gone.
And then she's going from showing how music has devolved. It used to be the Beatles, and now it's Miley Cyrus with her legs spread. Well, I agree that Miley Cyrus's music is trash, and I agree generally. I just don't like pop music in general. Probably through most decades, it's not my favorite. But and there is something that probably now more than ever, people are able to sell their music with really cheap sort of publicity stunts or stylistic things or being controversial or whatever, rather than actually having sort of talent. That there is some truth to that. But the thing about the Beatles is that this conservative woman, if she existed when the Beatles were in the height of their popularity in the 60s or whatever, she would be saying that this is the end of civilization, that this is depravity. Oh my God, look at the values that the Beatles are promoting. And she probably, I'm sure if I look through her video catalog, there is somewhere that's probably criticizing, imagine there's no country. I mean, the Beatles wrote atheist songs, right? I mean, I don't know the whole history of, I'm sure that they, like a lot of people, changed their mind, or different members of the Beatles were more or less religious or whatever, but they definitely have music that promotes atheism, probably more so than promoting Jesus. I don't know for sure if they have a bunch of Jesus songs too, but yeah, we definitely know maybe one of their more famous songs, Imagine There's, but I guess, I don't know, maybe I guess that's John Lennon, so maybe she's not going to count John Lennon as part of the Beatles. Whatever it is, there's nothing necessarily objectively amazing about the Beatles. Obviously, they're one of the most popular bands of all time, but it's just kind of funny how sometimes these conservatives who then like to act like, people who probably were more so heroes of the left are like, now they're nostalgic for those good old days. There's something funny about that.
Gone from this to this. I wanted a fresh, more objective
And then
take
she's showing like a very stereotypical Pleasantville type family to, I guess the show was Modern Family. I don't know. It's like basically she's like, and now we have sitcoms with faggots. I don't have anything else to say about that. She's right. There are now faggots in sitcoms. I guess we're screwed.
I've already discussed how cultural Marxists destroy art in a prior video, and I've linked that below. So I did a little research and went through this New York Times article, The Best Art of 2016. As expected, every racial, ethnic, and religious background is represented here. In typically postmodern fashion, perceived equality above meritocracy. Seriously, number 1, National Museum of African American History and Culture. Number 2 is a black political activist. I'll link this below so you can check out some of his terrible artwork. Number 3.
I do agree with this point in the sense that if you go into a lot of museums, especially modern art museums, it seems like what gets you in there is some sort of acceptable social justice political message. So your art is going to be centered around sexism and racism that sort of get you in the door and get you the approval. I certainly never see any conservative art, right? So I do feel like there is something that does kind of irritate me about that, right? That the only kind of art you see in these museums has to be from one political perspective, a very sort of stereotypical viewpoint. Is you don't see art from a lot of different viewpoints, but yeah. Anyway, let's keep going.
Is the art of the Quran. Number 4, Jerusalem, every people under heaven. Number 5, Paint the Revolution, Mexican modernism. And number 6, literally feminist trash art. And I won't bore you, so I'll skip to number 14, my personal favorite, which is an award-winning poem written by an Asian guy called New Nose. I can't resist reading this to you. No to racists, no to fascists, no to taxes funding racists and fascists. No mercy for rapists, no pity for bigots, no forgiveness for nativists, no to...
Well, what this poem does show you, as shitty as the poem is, and obviously the most stereotypical, unoriginal SJW poem ever written, I can agree with her here, you don't have to be a super conservative Christian to virtue signal and to be very adamant about your morality, right? So this SJW, their 10 commandments, it's, no racism, no fascism, no rapists, no Islamophobia. So I guess, the problem that I see here is she's conflating the idea between sort of SJWs and nihilists. Now, not to say that it's impossible that there's ever some sort of overlap, but they actually don't really go hand in hand at all. I mean, I would argue that a true, someone who's a nihilist probably, who's actually thought it through, a postmodern nihilist who thinks that things are subjective, whatever, probably isn't going to adopt SJW ideology, because they're going to think that true sort of morality, one, it's not objective, but also that the highest form of morality or ethical system is the one that you sort of create from yourself, your own perspectives, not just adopting what some authority figure tells you to believe. So I don't agree with this idea that of kind of using SJW ideology as synonymous with nihilistic ideology. That's just not true. If anything, sort of SJW ideology has a much more in common with a sort of religion, a sort of religious way of looking at things, like that there is this objective thing. And the only difference is that the SJWs have their own set of 10 commandments.
all those. No hope without rage, no rage without teeth, no separate peace, no easy feet, no to bounds by gender, no to clickbait as culture, no to news as truths, no to art as untruths. No anti-Semitic anything, no Islamophobic anything. No progress without others, no meaning without meaning. No means no, no means no. No means no, no means no. What is the best modern art? Anything that embodies the notion that all people, no matter their skill set, talents, abilities, race, gender, religion, whatever, are the same. Trash can be art. The Quran can be beautiful. Up can mean down, yes can mean no. Unless no means no. And isn't this the heart of nihilism? The idea that nothing exists outside of...
No. I mean, someone who is nihilistic, why would they in particular find the Quran to be beautiful? You probably find the Bible to be beautiful. Probably a nihilist is not going to find the Quran to be that beautiful. So...
your own reality. If nothing is inherently good or bad or right or wrong, then why believe in anything except for yourself and hedonism?
Well, that is one way of going about life. You could become a hedonist, but a lot of people, religion or not, realize that hedonism doesn't always work out. You can't just constant pleasure seek. There's downsides to that, right? It doesn't have to be from a religious perspective. There are downfalls to just doing a lot of drugs. There's plenty of people who are all sorts of nihilist, atheists, whatever else, who don't want to partake in drugs, let's say. And then there's people who would identify as being super religious people who probably, drink and do drugs and engage in hedonistic activities all the time. So there doesn't necessarily have to be an obvious correlation between religion and atheism and whether the degree to which you're hedonistic. Now there could be one, but there's nothing really that needs to be intrinsically linked between these things.
Art, basically every musical genre has been bastardized since postmodernism has permeated Western society. Classical music, which arguably has the most stringent set of standards, became dissident and unsettling, and increasingly abandoned the attempt to create moving works in favor of those that made a statement. Here's a piece you all know well. Beethoven used conventional key signatures and timing to create something emotional and moving, despite what will be deemed as constraints by postmodernists. His symphony was critically acclaimed at the time, and we all know it.
Yeah, there isn't really this whole big thing, not that, at least not that I know, maybe I'm wrong, but this whole big revolution that's saying Beethoven sucks or the constraints or whatever. No, some people like classical music, some people don't. Don't really think there's necessarily a correlation between postmodernism or whether you're Christian or nihilistic. In fact, I think nihilists probably love classical music. They love to just murder people and rape as they're listening to Beethoven, right? So, yeah, I don't know. I disagree.
Because it gives us a feeling and it awakens our senses. It moves us. Let's compare him to postmodernist composer John Cage, who is best known for his incorporation of unconventional instrumentation and the idea that environmental music is dictated by chance. He is most famous for his silent piece, I swear to God, entitled 4 minutes and 33 seconds.
There's a man in a suit with a very long coat, a very long suit jacket. He's closing his piano and starting his stopwatch and doing nothing.
Yes, it is just silence for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. It is supposed to be a statement about how the concert hall made the real music, likely another nod to this postmodern nihilistic philosophy that nothing in the world has a
Yes. Sitting in front of your piano for 4.5 minutes, that's changing the fabric of society as we know it.
existence except for your own stupid interpretation. There has always been an element of counterculture and angst inherent to certain genres, most notably grunge and punk. But even in pop culture, there was always a spirit of revolution, like is present in most Beatles albums. The cultural trend towards hedonism and self-aggrandizement intensified after the 1950s and allowed music to devolve.
So do you want revolution or not? I mean, I know what you're trying to do is you're saying that revolution is sort of anti-nihilistic, but revolution also might be to upend the traditional values that you believe in, that you really think are important. It's not that you're just against nihilism, you're in favor of your view of what's a conservative Christian viewpoint. So you're not obviously not into SJWs. You're not into SJW revolution songs, right? You're not into punk rock songs that are all about SJW values. So why are you pretending like you're into songs, that you would be into a culture that is promoting revolution? You wouldn't be. You know, you're anti-nihilist, but you're not just cool with people that believe they have objective moral principles. You're only cool with them if they feel like they have objective moral principles that align with your view of what the right objective moral principles are.
The mere displays of hypersexuality, self-indulgence, narcissism, and greed. Further, as the Smithsonian points out, since 1955, temporal variety has gone down. That means that songs are becoming more and more homogenous. The study also found that pitch content has decreased, which means that the number of chords and different melodies has gone down. Musicians today seem to be less adventurous in moving from one chord or note to another, instead following the paths well trod by their predecessors and contemporaries.
Wait, what? I thought you were all into Beethoven and following the rules, but now you're complaining that people aren't taking enough risks musically? Which is it?
So music has decreased in technical quality and the subject matter has shifted to unprecedented levels of depravity. And we wonder why we have a fully indoctrinated nihilistic youth. And perhaps nowhere is it more obvious of our indoctrination into the cult of...
So she has a problem when all music sounds the same, unless it's the kind of music that she thinks is objectively good. Then they can all sound the same. She wouldn't want you to go outside the confines of those rules.
Nihilism than in movies and in television. There's always a feminist or leftist agenda, whether or not they bother trying to obscure it. Even though it has been off the air for years now, I think the worst offender that has achieved the most long-term damage has got to be Sex and the City. The women in the show are in their mid-30s and early 40s, and despite the main character having...
This is probably the part where I agree the most, so fuck that show.
An abortion, a shopping addiction, and a pack-a-day smoking habit under her belt, she still manages, in New York City, where women drastically outnumber men, to meet nice, handsome, wealthy, tall guys that fall in love with her and her glamorous lifestyle. I don't even need to tell you why this has given a false impression to young women. We also see nihilism in the spike of dystopian entertainment in recent years. Walking Dead and Mad Max, for example, show a bleak world where man is feral and there is no law but that which survival dictates. Black Mirror, on the other hand, shows a bleak future where we have given divine status to technology, which in turn is destroying humanity. But all portray...
So what are you saying? Black Mirror, at least from what I remember from watching it, is showing sort of like a dystopian future, right? It's not saying we want dystopia, this is a good thing. It's kind of like, in a way, it's like a horror sort of situation. It's kind of freaky and creepy. It's not like we're all watching Black Mirror and like, ooh, I want society to become cold and robotic and creepy like this. Like, I don't think that's the reaction that most people have to Black Mirror, is wanting to live in all these realities. So, yeah, this criticism makes no sense.
Life without mysticism. There's no higher moral standard to devote oneself to. So what prompted this overwhelming tide of nihilism that 2 world wars, countless famines, and horrific diseases could not? Yes, cultural Marxism and postmodernism are certainly responsible. But would this infection be so pervasive in the absence of the internet? Never before have we been exposed to so much information and to so much communication. It has allowed for the normalization of depravity. You used to be limited to what was in front of you, your imagination, and your memories, but now you can see anything that you want to. The endless possibilities available on the internet have pushed our limits and made us need more to be shocked or really to feel anything at all. As so many have correctly pointed out, we are seemingly witnessing the
That part's probably true.
end of our civilization. Black Pigeon Speaks has made a very good video about this recently, and I've linked that below. And sometimes, even often, I do feel very hopeless. But then, like I discussed in my last video, I see signs that people are getting sick of this. There is a huge trend towards conservatism in
Don't get too hopeless. You might become a nihilist.
Generation Z. Pop stars seem to be scaling back their images to some degree, and more generally, people just seem fed up with oversaturated celebrity culture. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Is the shift in popular culture a sign that we're moving away from hedonism and nihilism as a society? Am I too hopeful or am I too pessimistic? Interested in hearing what you have to say. Thanks, and I'll see you soon.
I think I've said enough.